Hey, yo, what's the deal? That's your boy Tag from Pro Wrestling Tag. You know what I mean? As of this recording right now, it is 8:56 p.m., but the upload time is 11:30 p.m. And, you know, as I'm going through a lot of tweets from different people, on social media and such, I'm seeing about, how Hulk Hogan's passing, was very impactful to some, how, what Hulk Hogan meant to some people and such, to some, Hulk Hogan was like he was their legend, you know what I mean? He was their icon, you know what I mean? And listen, there's a difference between Hulk Hogan and Terry Bollea, right? I want to focus mostly on Hulk Hogan. Now, I mean, this might be a long video, you know what I mean? But fuck it, I'm gonna shoot the shit. I think this makes sense for me to create a very, very long video for this one, because growing up, when I was pretty young, right? I started watching wrestling at 4 years old. Now, I mean, I got caught to pro wrestling. Hulk Hogan, today's passing, and I'm going to go back to what I was going to say. Today's passing was a very eerie reminder that a very special golden era that I grew up in is slowly fading away. And it's slowly dying. A couple of days ago, of course, with the death of Malcolm Jamal Warner, that of course hit, right? That hit. Like, even I wasn't the biggest Cosby Show fan. Like, of course, Theo was iconic, right? But Hulk Hogan was a staple. When you think of the 80s, right? When you think of that time, there's a lot of stuff I remember from that time, B. A lot. I'm gonna give y'all a point of view of, why Hulk Hogan's death basically, for me, it hit. And yes, I did say some stuff about him being a racist and such. That's Terry Bollea. Okay, that's Terry Bollea. I'm talking about Hulk Hogan, the character, right? I grew up in Williamsburg. I grew up in the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn. And I lived on the south side. This was pre-gentrification. Way pre-gentrification. You know what I mean? The Puerto Ricans was out. Now, I mean, you had, Puerto Rican gangs and such. Like, you had the Arabian Nights. You know what I mean? You had a bunch of crews and shit, right? I grew up at a time when, there was a lot. It was me and the TV, right? I had Atari. I had, the Nintendo. I had Atari 2600 and such. I remember times when, especially in the summertime, when, we used to go to the park. There's a park right up there by where the B46 was at, and right there by the J train. Right, I used to play around and stuff. My mom used to also take me to a park right there by what the fuck you call those projects? Taylor White's, Taylor White's. In the summertime, like we would go and playing the sprinklers. The ice cream man was there, so I was eating ice cream, and this is during the day. You know what I mean? Before then, I was watching, WPIX, Channel 11. I was watching Little Rascals, you know what I mean? And I was watching other stuff on TV. I remember, like, when they had the We Will Be Right Back bumper, like, they would show the sky and they would show, like, fireworks and such, right? Taylor White's, when I went, to play around and such, we seen the ice cream man. One of my favorite ice creams was, believe it or not, there's a bunch of ice creams I love. Like, the red, white, and blue rocket ices. The ice cream with the gum, the gum in the middle. But my favorite was hands down the WWE ice cream bars, the WWF ice cream bars. And one of those ice cream bars had Hulk Hogan. It had Hulk Hogan on it, right? I also remember a time when, they used to give the Saturday night's main event, right? They used to give it like late, like around, we're talking about like 11 o'clock. It used to actually replace, what's his face? Saturday Night Live, right? And seeing Hulk Hogan wrestle, it was very rare because you didn't see Hulk Hogan wrestle on WWF Superstars nor Wrestling Challenge. He was so much of a special attraction that you had to see him wrestle on pay-per-view and such. Then there was also another time when, not too far where I live at, there was a toy store called Lowen's. I think it was on South First. It was on South First and Havamite, I think. You know what I mean? And because I used to go to PS 17, and Lowen's was not too far from there, so they used to take the kids on trips and such, and outside. And one of those places we used to go was Lowen's, right? Lowen's was a place where they had toys, a bunch of toys. They had video games and such. I had got my first Atari 2600 there. You know what I'm saying? I also had gotten a Nintendo Entertainment System. Yeah, no. My older brother gave me the Nintendo Entertainment System. I was never a Sega guy. I was mostly a Nintendo guy. But later on, I started loving Sega, right? Well, and of course, I had a bunch of games at that time. You know what I mean? A bunch of Nintendo games. I had a bunch of 2600 games too. One of the games that I actually had was WWF WrestleMania. And who the fuck was on the cover? Hulk Hogan. Also not too far from where I live at, they had a little candy stand, right? And so with the candy stand, I remember getting like, marbles, those little cardboard airplanes that you put together, baseball cards, wrestling cards. Oh yeah, speaking of wrestling cards, the ice cream bars had wrestling cards inside there. It's cool shit. You know what I mean? They had wrestling cards and such. Also going back to Lowen's, I used to get wrestling figures too, of course. One of them was definitely Hulk Hogan. I used to get the WWF ring, the blue ring. You know what I mean? It was fun. And they had like the little thumb wrestlers and such, and they had the generic wrestlers. And ironically enough, right? One of the generic wrestlers looked exactly like Hulk Hogan. Even on TV, like, watching TBS, watching all kinds of shows. Like, I grew up on a lot of stuff. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because Hulk Hogan represented that. I could go on and on and on and on and on about shows that I loved watching back in the days. A lot of shows. I mean, we're talking about sitcoms, like, Different Strokes, The Facts of Life, Silver Spoons, Webster, Small Wonder, What's Happening Now, What's Happening, Punky Brewster, fucking Head of the Class, Growing Pains, Family Ties, and such. And even other shows like Knight Rider, MacGyver, you know what I mean? The $6 Million Man. You know what I mean? It was a bunch. Even like when we had when I had Nickelodeon. You know what I mean? I had Nickelodeon. I was watching shows like Double Dare, Finders Keepers. And then remember, it switched from Nickelodeon to Nick at Night. And that's when I would discover old shows like Dobie Gillis. Let me see. What else? Laverne and Shirley. I used to like watching The Honeymooners too. We used to come on Channel 11 and such. That's another thing I remember too about my childhood. You know, there was a Chinese restaurant right there on South Third. You know what I mean? Every time like my mom would take me, to the park, especially on the weekends, like we would come back, she'd buy me Chinese food and ice cream. We go right to the park, come out the park. You know what I mean? And they had, I don't give a fuck, they had the best Chinese food I've ever tasted in my life. But with entertainment, the A-Team and such, Hulk Hogan was part of that staple. And there was a bunch of stuff, even with cartoons. Even with fucking cartoons like Woody Woodpecker, Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, Balbar, Thundercats, He-Man, She-Ra, Voltron, Gem, Gem, the Jetsons, the Flintstones, the Smurfs, my favorite, Gumby. I also remember watching this show called Romper Room. This is all New York City. Romper Room used to come on Channel 9. Another show, there's a sitcom, Out of This World. Charles in Charge. I'm going off topic, but not necessarily, right? Hulk Hogan was part of that staple because I remember a lot of stuff that, that was part of the 80s. Michael Jackson, MC Hammer, especially Michael Jackson, Madonna, fucking Cher, I remember they had, house music, freestyle music was in. Freestyle music was the shit. I love freestyle music. This was before I got into hip hop. Like, I definitely was a hip hop fan then, but not like, I didn't become a heavy hip hop fan until the 90s when I moved into Crown Heights. But the first act that I seen, honestly, was fucking Kid and Play. Kid and Play, you know what I'm saying? MC Hammer, clean stuff, But like I said, Hulk Hogan represented that because, mind you, he was part of that era. He was part of my childhood. He was a clear part of my childhood, and, the 80s was beyond synonymous with Hulk Hogan. I'm sorry. It was, if it wasn't him, then for me, it was the Macho Man Randy Savage. But, he was synonymous to that decade. He was synonymous. Well, there was a lot of stuff. Shit. My uncle also used to, play a lot of records too. I know this is not related to wrestling, but it sort of is. Like, I remember my uncle playing. He used to play a bunch of shit. Like, he played a lot of R&B funk records, a lot of house music shit. That song, whip it all night. But then I also grew up on shit like fucking D-Train. Yeah, the one for me. It was a bunch of stuff. But like I said, Hulk Hogan was a big special reason that, my childhood was, special because, again, he was a footnote of it. He was a footnote. Like, I mentioned, like, Knight Rider, like Rocky, Rambo, Terminator, it's a bunch. It's a bunch I can't even fucking remember. Freddy, Jason, Halloween, the Ghostbusters. Like a bunch of stuff. It was a bunch. It was a bunch of shit. And like I said, Hulk Hogan was a staple of that. He was a big staple of that decade, a huge staple. You know what I'm saying? The Fat Boys. Like, it was just, and it was a beautiful time too because, all I needed was that TV, the antenna, the VCR, and I was straight. Because back in the days, we had cable, but we had something called WHT. We had WHT, and then, we wound up getting Time Warner. And as I'm talking more, I also remember commercials too. Crazy Sam, Crazy Eddie. The prices are insane. Wall Furniture Outlet. Wall Furniture Outlet, WFO. I remember that. Late nights was also a beautiful thing too. Late nights was real beautiful because the infomercials and such. Also Richard Simmons. You know what I'm saying? Again, there's a lot of stuff I remember during that time. It was special. It was very special. Even when I was a kid too, like going to trips, and everything. You know what I'm saying? We had this is all me in New York City. Yogi Bear. I never went to Yogi Bear. Believe it or not, I always wanted to go to Yogi Bear. I never got a chance to go to Yogi Bear. Ever. Just like I never had a chance to go to Great Adventure. I'm bitter about that. I'm gonna go at one point. Before I leave this world, I'm going to Great Adventure at one point. But again, staples of that childhood, again, it's all because of Hulk Hogan. It's not really all because of Hulk Hogan, but again, he reminds me, he's a staple of that childhood that I enjoyed. With movies, with video games, Super Mario Brothers, you know what I'm saying? Contra, let me see, what other games was Double Dragon. Kung Fu. I remember there was a pizzeria that was right there on, I think it was between South First and South Second. And they had Double Dribble. I remember playing Double Dribble. Double Dribble. I remember, and there was also a video store not too far from there where I rented games and such, right? Remember a game called Target Renegade. I remember it was a bunch, bro. Shinobi, Black Belt. Even though Black Belt was for the Sega Master System, Black Belt. What else? Rygar. Ninja Gaiden. You know what I'm saying? NES Pro Wrestling. Tecmo World Wrestling. You know what I mean? And also, there was this place. I don't know if it was a doctor's office and such, but there was this place where I played Vigilante. What else did I play? Arch Rivals. You know what I'm saying? Smash TV, Narc. It's a bunch, bro. It's a bunch. I'm going through memory lane. I used to eat sunflower seeds, and I used to have what the fuck? Capri Sun, going to the arcade. You know what I mean? They had the big Charms lollipops, not the blow pops, but the lollipops. You know what I'm saying? And I also remember a time when the next block from where we used to live at, there was this lady who sold pasteles. She used to have this big ass pack of pasteles. And my mom used to get for $1 a pack. She looked like cocaine, but that shit was good to the motherfucker. Again, Hulk Hogan's death, it brought me back to a beautiful childhood that, I will never unfortunately see again. And we will never see again. And again, I'm not talking about Terry Bollea. This is the longest video I've ever done. And I'm not talking about Terry Bollea. Fuck Terry Bollea. I'm talking about Hulk Hogan when I was young. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Conan. You know what I mean? I remember watching movies like, what the fuck you call that shit? American Ninja. It's a bunch. It's a whole bunch. My Little Pony is a bunch. But yeah, I mean, this is the longest video I have ever done since I started this channel. You know what I mean? But I feel like this is appropriate because, again, with a day like this, even game shows, shit, as I'm tuning now, The Price is Right, and shit, even more. Even I used to watch PBS, 3, 2, 1 Contact, My favorite, Bob Ross, The Joy of Painting. You know what I'm saying? MathNet, Nova. You know what I mean? There's a bunch, B. A bunch. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, Hulk Hogan's passing, unfortunately, it represented a time. Shit, I'll go even further, right? Jet Magazine TV. Oh, my goodness. When I had cable, I was watching BET when it was great to watch it. The real MTV when, they were actually giving nothing but music videos. What else did I used to watch? The 64 Pyramid Show, the 64 $1 Million Pyramid Show. Let me see, what else? Family Feud. Hulk Hogan's death made me think about a lot of stuff. It did. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on and on about stuff, but just his death, like, it's a fucked up reason that you should never take life for granted, ever. You definitely should never take it for granted. And yeah, it's sad. It's sad. But I'm about to be out, guys. You know what I mean? Friday is upon us. Hopefully there's some news and such, because this week has been shitty. This summer has been trash. This summer has been fucking garbage. And as I'm talking more, shows like Married with Children, funny ass sitcoms, you know what I'm saying? Man. But I look to hopefully get some news, some good news and such coming out of tomorrow and such. I just want this week to end. You know what I mean? It's been a shitty week. It's been a fucked up week. You know what I mean? So we'll see what happens. But I'm going to definitely holler at y'all. I'm going to check y'all. All right? Peace.